Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 35 of The Survival Project. Today, I'm joined by two more guests, Sarah O'Connor and Terri Brannigan, for a conversation on the female experience of living with IBD. And we have another cracker for you. Earlier in the week, we had the lads talking about the male experience of living with IBD. Today, the female experience. This episode takes a slightly different shape, and it's not about comparing who has it harder, obviously the men. It's about understanding the different ways that chronic illness can shape us. A massive thank you to Sarah and Terri, because just like the lads in this week's earlier episode, they were not afraid to head into the hard topics. We speak about the pressure to look well when you feel awful, the reality of being told you don't look sick, the comments that women receive about their bodies, the fear around relationships and actually opening up to a partner, and the way chronic illness can completely change how you see yourself. And to be honest, that's just scratching the surface of the value of this episode. This isn't a conversation about how hard things are. This is a conversation about how strong you can get despite. So let's get into it. So ladies, it is great to have you back for this World IBD Day special. Both of you have been two amazing guests before, so I'm delighted to get the chance to sit down again with you and have a conversation about all things IBD. So Terri, welcome. Always a pleasure. And Sarah, yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I said I'd come back with a different hair colour to confuse people. So I'm back as a redhead this time round.
I'm going to need a different cover photo now. So you'll have to
God, yeah, I'll have to get a new headshot done. Oh my God.
Very VIP celebrity buzz here. Absolutely. So, ladies, I really want to thank you both for joining me today. And we both had such strong conversations with everything. And I always feel that the first conversation that you have is nearly the step ladder to kind of move into the deeper stuff. So today, definitely want to dive into a lot more of the deeper things that come with living life with chronic illness. So I suppose to kick things off, we all know it's an invisible illness. And I suppose, Terri, I'll start with you first. If someone was to meet you on a good day or a bad day, they really never know what you're going through. What are they not seeing?
For me, they're predominantly not seeing fatigue. Like, the fatigue is just, it can be horrendous some days where you're just trying to push through, you're just trying to get up. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but I always make myself get up, put makeup on, because I feel like if I don't have makeup on, people are going, "Oh, you okay? You look very tired." And I'm like, yes, I'm exhausted. But yeah, no, the fatigue is terrible. I tend to get migraines quite a lot as well. And you just kind of have to push through it and try to power through when you're going to work, when you're going to the gym, whatever it is that you're doing. And people might think you're in a bad mood that day, but it's just a case of you're just having a bad day and you're just trying to get through it, and that's all you can do.
I think you touched on a really interesting point there, Terri, around putting the makeup on and almost, putting our face on and going out into the public. And it's something I toy with a lot. Like, for example, when you go to appointments, and you put the makeup on, you're like, but are they going to believe that I'm not feeling well? Because to the eye, I look good. And some days I'm like, well, if I don't put in the effort, someone will believe me in a way. So I think that's a really interesting point. But I would absolutely resonate with the fatigue, with the migraines actually as well. So I live with Crohn's disease and MS. So kind of double whammy with the fatigue. And then, definitely migraine. I would say the mornings for me are one of the hardest, and I work remotely and we have a 9 a.m. call every morning. And I think people think I'm the spawn of the devil, because on that call, I'm just like, they're probably like, what is going on with this girl? But they don't realise. And sometimes I explain, if I get someone one-on-one, I'm like, that's not a true representation of me. It's just, I'm not great in the mornings.
I actually find for me, it's more evening time. As the day goes on, I kind of tend to crash. So in the morning, I've got loads of energy. But then later on in the day, I start to crash and the headache will come in, the fatigue will come in even more. So I like to get a lot of stuff done in the morning, the gym, all that kind of thing. Because I know when it comes to the evening time, I'm just going to have to come home and go to bed. And like, can't even speak some days when I get home. I just need to go straight to bed and like shut the lights off and be done with the day.
When it comes to, I know you both mentioned there about, putting the makeup on, and it kind of defines how you show up on a day. And obviously we all want to look and feel our best, no matter where we go and what we do. And then to also have the contrast of being like, do I look too good for what I'm saying I'm feeling? Like, that is just a constant over and back in the mind of what am I supposed to do in the day? That must be a lot to be dealing with, the kind of contrast and thoughts that must come with these things.
It's the line as well, but you look great. Like, oh my God, I wouldn't know you're going through it. And like, I think if I had €1 for every time, I wouldn't be sitting on this podcast. I'd be in the Bahamas right now. It's just that line that people instantly throw out. And I get where it comes from. Absolutely. I get why people say it. And sometimes I've had to hold myself back on saying it to others. But we do, as much as we don't want to, we do judge by appearance and what we see outwardly. And that is what's so hard about invisible illnesses. Like you almost have to wear a badge and someone's trying to, read your badge and what is it, because there's no outward signs a lot of the time. And that comes back around to that piece of, well, today if I don't wear the makeup and I wear a tracksuit and my hair is messy and up in a bun, well, then someone will say, well, she must be tired, and they take me more seriously, I think. I don't know, Terry, if you can relate to that one.
100% I can relate to that. Like thinking back on the days when I was going into work and then having hospital appointments later on in the day. So you're going into work, you're obviously wearing your makeup and stuff like that. And then they do see it in the hospital walking in. And I feel like you're quite similar to me, Sarah. Like you go in with big happy head on you and hi, nice to see you again. It's lovely. And they see you being cheerful and happy to see them. And I'm going, no, I'm happy to see you because you're my doctor. You're going to make me feel better. It's not like, as lovely as you are, you're not my best friends. I'm not going to be like full of the joys of spring every time I see you. But yeah, when you've put the effort in to, I suppose, put your mask on and show people, no, I'm just trying to, or not show people, you are just trying to get through the day. You're just trying to survive it. But then if you don't have your mask on, people are going, yeah, okay, let's take her seriously now. You do find that quite a lot, yeah.
There's definitely a lot more pressures than when it comes to looking good as a woman than there is a man. There's a lot more societal pressures, a lot more things that you have to worry about than we do. And it always comes back to a thing that I regularly see online where a man would say to a woman, oh, you'd look a lot nicer if you smile more. Do you know, these sort of comments that they tend to come out. What would you say that because of how this impacts how you show up in the world, how has it affected your sense of identity and possibly your sense of femininity? So I suppose, Terry, I'll start with you.
For me, I actually think I've probably gotten more into my femininity as I've grown older and as I've gotten my stoma. I think before that, I used to just throw on the tracksuits, kind of nearly had a uniform as to how I dressed, comfy clothes, wasn't usually that dressed up, was going to work in kind of the same thing, day in, day out, just like a general routine of what I could wear and feel comfortable in. Whereas now I'm a lot more open to experimenting with how I like to dress and that kind of thing. So for me, having a stoma has probably changed it for me a lot more, that I feel more comfortable and more confident in myself. One of the things we were saying there about people saying, well, you don't look sick. So I was always somebody that carried a bit of weight. So I'd lose weight and people would be like, oh my God, you look great. And I'd be like, yeah, thanks. That's because I'm in the bathroom 50 times a day. It's not because I'm trying. But like, so that whole thing for women, it does all tie in with your body image as well. So for me, it was always a case of, well, I looked great when I was sick because I was slimmer. And then I'd be pumped full of steroids. So people would be like, oh, you're not feeling well, because I'd have the moon face. And it's trying to battle that. Whereas I've just kind of gotten to the point now where I like how I look now. I like how I present myself now. And I do it for me now. I don't do it for anybody else. So I think I've grown up in that sense with it.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, because it seems like getting the stoma has allowed you to kind of find yourself and find your power again, whereas your illness had taken that away from you, and it said you weren't wearing comfy clothes because you just wanted to feel good and comfortable when you're feeling so terrible all the time. So yeah, it's beautiful to hear how the stoma has had such a positive impact on your life. And how about you, Sarah?
Yeah, like I'm definitely agreeing with some of the points you're saying there, Terry, and then definitely the last point you touched on there around, it's doing it for yourself. I remember when I first got sick, I probably hadn't realised just how thin I was. And then I look back on pictures, and when I did start to put a bit of weight back on, people were like, oh my God, like you look terrible, you were so thin. And it's like, you can't actually please people, and you have to stop trying to please other people. Like, no matter how slim you are or how much weight, someone will always have something to say. And so I think that's the first piece around first coming to terms with the fact that your body changes when you're unwell, and people will comment on it no matter what it is, but just getting comfortable in knowing that it will, unfortunately have to go through those times sometimes where you're losing weight or gaining weight or taking steroids and different things. So that was definitely one area that I've had to just try and get a bit more comfortable with. I think a second part for me is actually around how I dress. So weddings for me are definition of hell on earth. They're a long day, there's fatigue, there's too much food, there's alcohol, there's dancing, there's erratic eating hours. And then I'm like, I'm going to bloat and I'm going to have so much pain, and I can't wear your nice tight dresses because I'm going to be really conscious for that whole day and I'm not going to have a good time. So I would say for me, that factors into how I dress for events like that. And I think probably the third piece around femininity is, look, Crohn's disease is a condition that is about our bowels by and large. And it's an area that often people don't want to talk about or are embarrassed about, which we shouldn't be. But I think particularly as women, we may feed into that a little bit more. And I think I shared this when I was on the podcast with you before, Jonathan, but I now and again have to do rectal foam. And rectal foam is by no stretch of the word a nice thing to have to do or talk about or even say out loud. And, I remember when I first started taking it, I said to my boyfriend, right, just give me 10 minutes and I'll call you in. I'll call you when I'm done and then we'll all go to bed. Why? I think it was embarrassment, and it felt taboo almost. And after the first couple of times, I was like, no, do you know what? I want to be able to lie here and watch a bit of Netflix and then just do it right before I fall asleep. So, you do your thing over there and I'll be doing this over here. And that was actually really freeing. And actually kind of just taking that step and just becoming a bit more comfortable with the fact that, yes, my condition involves parts of my body that some people are uncomfortable talking about. I've actually grown to, I think, be more comfortable talking about my body and like even openly saying that here and not seeing it as anything that's strange or unusual. It's just a part of my day. But I think no more than you said there, Terri, you own it and you grow into it. And you just learn how to express your femininity and you get stronger actually more than anything, I think.
Oh, 100% you do. And I think like that with your boyfriend, like obviously must be a really nice guy. He had no issues with that. Just took you as you are. And same with mine as well. And I think when you find somebody that just takes you for who you are like that, it's a really lovely thing. Whereas, I don't know about you, Sarah, but there's obviously been other people in, I'm sure, all our lives where they're going, you've a bag? Oh, you've Crohn's disease? And then they get a little bit freaked out about it and they just don't understand it. Whereas finding somebody that just understands completely and just kind of goes, yeah, whatever, that's just Sarah, that's just Terri, that's just Jonathan doing their thing, like, and they just get on with it. And I just think that's amazing. And I listened to your episode of the pod as well. And when you were saying that, I was like, wow, that's brilliant that she felt so confident to do that and have no issues with it.
I think as well, I was thinking of a point recently where, when we go for different appointments, doing colonoscopies or having to have examinations that, look, aren't comfortable, I often think in those moments I disassociate a little from my body and I go into it and I look at my body as the vessel that needs to be examined or something has to be done to it in that point in time. And I kind of disconnect. And I was recently talking to a woman about that and she was like, what? Like, how is that even possible? But you have to learn, I think, to accept that things have to be done to your body either by health professionals or yourself in an effort to help improve your life. And if that means I'll walk into that appointment and I'll pretend that I'm not even a person and understand that they have done these things hundreds of times before. Whereas in the past, I think, and a lot of people are in that situation where they'll go into a healthcare professional and they might be afraid to show them a body part or talk about it because it's almost like too private or again, that word taboo, and nothing is off the table with health professionals, obviously. But I think as well, finding those people in your life that you can have these open conversations with, because some of the best conversations I've had have been talking about really intimate health things or how, feelings or emotions. And that's where you really get the beauty of it, I think.
Amazing. And amazing to share that. And absolutely, doesn't your health issues, I won't say force you, but allow you to dive into much deeper conversations with people where you go below the surface level of the usual conversation. So it's a great thing to be able to do. One thing I just want to touch on is you both have partners and you're both very open with your partners about your experience. I suppose there could be a girl listening to this who has maybe a fear of opening up to her partner, possibly a fear of rejection by letting them in to see what actually goes on. What advice would you have for her?
I would say it's a really difficult thing. So where I've been in my journey and my diagnosis, so when I was first diagnosed, I was in a long-term relationship. For other reasons that ended. I had another relationship and now the kind of third since I've been diagnosed is the one I'm currently in. And they were all quite different in how, I suppose, where I was at, number one, with accepting my conditions and living with them and managing them. And I suppose I'm probably in the best place now because the furthest time has passed through. And I think that's the first piece of the round. The word acceptance is a hugely powerful word. And I won't say someone ever has to fully 100% accept something, but I think it's around getting comfortable in, okay, this is what I have and this is what I have to do. And that's for me, number one. And then number two is if the person you're with is willing to learn. I think the most amazing thing that they can do is actually, if you tell them, I have Crohn's, I have whatever it might be, and they take the time to go away and just do a Google themselves or, get onto a reliable source, Crohn's and Colitis Ireland, and make the effort. That just feels so powerful. And I see it time and time again with partners coming to patient days or support groups or actively engaging with resources. And I think that's amazing. So if you feel the conversation is too heavy to do yourself, you can always say, look, why don't you go on here? Like, here's a blog post, here's an FAQ page, read that, and that will help you understand. Or here's someone on social media talking about their experience, and this will help you to understand me. It's not a conversation that has to happen all at once. It can be slowly kind of filling them in, and they'll live through your good days and your bad days with you. And there's the point, I suppose, as well of needing to make sure that you're with the right person that is able and wanting to be there on the bad days. And vice versa. I mean, when you're with your partner, they may not have, no one's going to have every day being perfect. You just never know what the path is going to be. And yeah, if they're there for you now, who's to say you won't have to be there for them as well in time? But yeah, it's not an easy conversation, but take it step by step. And if you have to point someone in to the correct resources, absolutely do.
I completely agree with you. And I think it sounds like we have very similar dating backgrounds. I've three relationships as well. One at the very start of not the very start of getting diagnosed, but one kind of late teens, early 20s. And that ended when I was in kind of mid 20s, and another one mid 20s to 30s. And then now my current one. Yeah. And like that, all through different stages of where I was at on my Crohn's journey. But once my kind of middle relationship, I had my stoma during that relationship. And I was the one that completely changed. My whole outlook on life completely changed. So in turn, the relationship changed in that sense. So that was kind of, I suppose, difficult in that sense, but it was just the best thing for the two of us to just kind of walk away from that. And then in the relationship that I'm in now, I remember when I first told him, he kind of thought there was something that I wasn't telling him. And then when I kind of said, look, I have this health thing, it's called Crohn's disease. And I kind of, like you said, drip fed it a little bit at the start, Crohn's disease, didn't mention anything about a bag. And then kind of later on was just like, okay, so I have a bag. And he just kind of went, okay. And like he only told me maybe 6-8 months later that he didn't know what that was at the time, but he went off, Googled it, done his own research, kind of came back and then kind of went, yeah, okay. Well, like he didn't say to me, yeah, okay, Grant, he obviously said it to himself, but like went off, did his own research and kind of, that was it. Anytime he has questions, he asks them and there's no real weirdness about it. Whereas I found other people can tiptoe around you quite a bit when they're not too sure what to ask. But yeah, I think if they're willing to, as you said, go off, do the research themselves and kind of decide that it's something that they're okay with living with a partner that has that. And it can be tough. And they do see our good and our bad days. And sometimes the bad days are really bad and sometimes the good days are great. But have to take one with the other. And if they're willing to do that, then it's a great thing.
I get the question of, and is this a Crohn's thing or is this an MS thing? Which is going on here? I'm like, it could be both. I think it's both together. I actually don't know. I'm like, by and large, toilet, we'll say Crohn's, okay? Yeah.
Well, I think that's just beautiful what you both share, because when you're open and honest with people, you give them the opportunity to show up for you. And it's a great way, I won't say to dig through the weeds as well, but by being open and honest with people, you see who they truly are and whether they're going to be a right fit for you in your life. So it's a beautiful thing to share. And I'm so happy that you have such great people in your life, because you need good people in your life on this journey, and it really helps the whole situation. But one thing that's a kind of common theme that comes up in every single conversation that I have with women, whether it's Crohn's, MS, I spoke to a girl with Lyme disease, I spoke to another lady with endometriosis, and it comes up with when they're first forced to go in and seek help for a health issue that comes up, a question that's usually thrown at them is, are you on your period? Is it a hormone issue and things like that? Obviously that's not something that I can speak on. I have very little experience on it, but would you like to dive into that for me a little bit? Maybe we'll start off with you, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. I will stand on a hill over this phrase. I was recently in a bookstore and a lady has written a book, and I believe the title is something along the lines of, are you sure it's not your period? So one of my first symptoms of Crohn's disease was passing blood. I was lucky that my GP was female and that question actually never arose. She believed me from the get-go. But when I flare, one of my first symptoms is blood, and I've either, been seen by a male doctor, I've gone through A&E or whatever the different processes. And unfortunately, I have had the question, are you sure you're not on your period? And it is one of the most utterly frustrating questions because, look, I've had my period since I was 13. Understand the general anatomy of where blood is coming from in my body, and to be dismissed or to even have that question surfaced, it frustrates me every single time. Rather than fight over it, sometimes I've just said, no, I'm absolutely sure it's not. I'm not on my period. So that would be the first thing I think you have to overcome. When I was in the lead up to getting diagnosed with Crohn's, I was in A&E a couple of times over the space of a few months with abdominal cramps. And a lot of the time the question was raised around, is it ovarian cysts? Or could it be your period? Or, is it something along the lines of that? And I went for numerous scans of my ovaries and all were coming back clear. So I do think there is a misconception, or there is at least a belief that when a woman goes in, it must be something to do with her period or her hormones or something. So yeah, I've definitely gone through that for sure.
I think for me, I've been lucky enough in a sense that I've had doctors that haven't questioned me when it's come to that. Probably not until later on where I've gone back after I've been diagnosed with Crohn's and gone back in and having really painful cramps at one point due to my period. And they weren't tying the two together, and they're trying to figure out what it is. And it's a tough one in our situation where they're going, no, that's your Crohn's disease. It's not your cramps. And it can kind of swing in roundabouts as to which one it is. And I always found that the team I had initially were great with that. But then as I got older and had to go in with then having period cramps, they were like, no, it's your Crohn. So I kind of got it the opposite way at times. So yeah, it's a tough one when it comes to that. And especially when it's just your hormones, you'll feel better next week and come back and see us then. It's a little bit like you just feel very dismissed when you're getting that kind of treatment, I suppose.
And Terry, would you find around your period that your symptoms of your Crohn's, like in the past or even now, would get worse?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you ask any woman whether she has Crohn's or not, stomach issues tend to flare up for them in any sense. Like whether you have Crohn's or colitis or anything, most women find that they get stomach issues around the time of their period. So I think it's only natural that we would as well. It's just unfortunate that we have Crohn's and that it can flare up even more once you get your period. And I'm assuming you're the same as well, that your symptoms would flare. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Both Crohn's and MS, actually. And you're right in actually saying a lot of women, I remember when I got my first ever period, actually, that was one of my first symptoms was gut symptoms. And I didn't know what was going on. Did I have a stomach bug or what? And then I ended up getting my first period. So yeah, there's definitely such a connection there. I would 100% notice, every month. It's just, no, you just know.
Is there more you'd like to dive into on that topic before I go on to something else? Definitely very educational for me anyway, because I'm like, hell, I'm so lucky I'm a man.
But that's even with sorry, I was just going to say, even with like the body image stuff and all that, I'm sure you got questions or you got comments as you were growing up about your weight, or you've lost weight or you've put on weight and all that. But I just feel like for men, it's not as prevalent as it is for women. I think people feel like they can comment more freely on a woman's body about it. Like they can just say, oh, you've lost weight, you look great. Or you've put on weight, you look great. Or you've put on too much weight now, don't put on any more. And I think that's kind of like, no.
Yeah, as a man, you don't get that one. You don't get that one. You will always get comments on your weight and how maybe you change and different things like that. I find I usually get them more from women than I ever get them from men. I would get them from aunties, others, grannies, stuff like that. Grannies say, oh, we need to put a bit more meat in your bones there, or, or you're getting a bit round in the face. Those sort of little comments. It's not usually men. Men will only comment on you whether you've gotten musclier or skinnier. It's kind of like, oh, are you in the gym? That's kind of the comments that you would definitely get off men. But yeah, I definitely think women get their bodies commented on 1,000 times more than a man would. Yeah. One of the things that kind of just springs to mind there as well, and it kind of comes down to body image and different things like that, is probably the sense of identity, and the sense of identity can be affected by getting diagnosed with a chronic illness. And I did a conversation with two guys during the week all around the topics of IBD. And one of the things that came up was that your sense of being a man, it's diminished. You have a fear that you'll never be able to step into that role of being the provider. One that came up Oliver spoke about was that he was afraid that if his sickness got to the point where he wasn't able to pick up his future child or provide for his future wife, there's a real fear for him growing up, or fear for him moving into a deeper relationship with a partner. So in the sense of we kind of know how it affects a man. I have these same fears myself. They crop up all the time. You want to be the provider, you want to be strong, and the disease, unfortunately, corrupts how you can look at yourself, or corrupts how you expect to be in society. What are the kind of pressures that come for you, or the dynamics that kind of change for you as women when a chronic illness diagnosis comes?
I think it's probably a term, but I think women are looked at as caregivers, and that role potentially shifts when actually you require care yourself. So women, I suppose, are the kind of people that are expected to, potentially take on more of the weight of looking after children if they have children, or be the homemaker, I suppose, to look for a traditional word. But when you become ill, a lot of that can go out the window. And I know I previously spoke with you, Jonathan, around the concept of having children. So I don't have children, but it's a topic that was asked of me very early on by people external when I was diagnosed. Questions like, do you want children? What happens if you have children and they have Crohn's? Will you be able to look after children? It was immediately the concept that was brought up before I had even had the chance myself to think about what do I actually want. So for me, it's definitely something that bubbles away in my mind a lot. And it comes to the piece around when is the perfect time if I do want to have children, when will be that perfect time? I mean, there's never a perfect time for anyone, but I know that I need to have both my conditions under control. I need to be in a good place. I need to, not be on steroids. I need to potentially stop some of my treatments. I need to make sure that I can stay as healthy as I can, and then plan for potentially flaring after giving birth, which is more likely with both of my conditions. So for me, that's been one area that continuously comes back up into my head and rattles around. And I think it takes away the, we'll start trying, because I feel like there's a lot more planning. Which, look, it is something that a lot of women have to go through anyway, even without chronic illness. But I think it definitely for me has brought that to the fore.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially when it comes around to like, there has to be a lot more planning. And I think from like early on, you kind of need to decide where you're going with it. Within your relationship, if that is something that you're possibly going to talk about, it's a conversation that needs to happen early enough in it, because you might have to try earlier on in your relationship or sooner than you would normally want to. And that's something that I don't know, don't have children either. So I'm not sure how that would go when we possibly decide ourselves to have children. And it is something that as women gets kind of ingrained in you, gets stuck in your head, and you're kind of like, is everything going to be okay? But you've got all the normal aspects of being a woman plus your illness thrown on top of that. And like, as you said, will I be sick afterwards? Will I be able to continue on looking after my child? Will I be able to do all the things that you need to do to mind your child and mind yourself afterwards? And we just don't know. We don't know until we get there, and that's the unfortunate thing about it.
From very early on, even when you're in deciding medications, you're kind of laid out the list, and it's like, well, if you want to have children, you can't really take this, you can't take that. And like, I know where I'm at. I'm on about my second last Crohn's option before I would have to go on something that means I can't get pregnant while I'm on it. And for my MS, I'm pretty much actually on the last option before I would have to start something that means I can't get pregnant. And I'm in that phase where my MS treatment isn't working. And I'm like, does this mean that I would need to potentially in the next 6 months, the next year? And then you get into this panic, and you're thinking, if all this wasn't a factor, I'd probably just be breezing through and maybe not even thinking about the eventuality of having children for another couple of years. But like you said there, Terry, it just brings it forward by a couple of years, and you are having to have those conversations a lot earlier in relationships. And they're tough conversations because, for a lot of people, it can just be like, we'll start trying, or we'll wait another year, wait another 2 years, what's that? And nothing's going to happen. But everything's so uncertain, and that uncertainty is really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And these things we're talking about, they're taken as a given for everyone else, all the rest of the population that doesn't suffer with chronic health issues. We're conditioned as children. We grow up, we meet someone, we buy a house, we have kids. This is the life that, everyone's supposed to live. And in fairness, it is the life that 99% of the population will go through and live. So when it comes to chronic illness diagnosis, all this is stolen away from you. Everything is stripped back, and you have to rebuild your life and plan for everything around you. Like even you're saying, Sarah, about being like, oh, will I be able to stay on my medication? While, like, will it affect a baby? Different things like that. The amount of planning and the amount of bandwidth you need in your mind just to get through a day with things that other people just get as a given. Obviously, a sense of grief can come up in the sense that we're grieving the lives that we were always supposed to live because our life has changed so much, and we can grieve the bodies that we were supposed to have. In your own lives, how has grief come up for you through your experience with chronic illness, and how have you kind of processed through it? So Terry, I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think this is something that I touched on when we spoke, Jonathan, the last time, is that I think I have a very, very different life now as to what I would have had if I hadn't have been diagnosed with Crohn's disease, or even if I had been diagnosed with Crohn's disease, but the medication actually worked and that I didn't go through the 15 odd years of being like very, very sick. I think I would have gone off traveling, possibly lived in Australia for a few years, done all that kind of thing, which I've never done. I'm not sad about it, and it's something that I've never been sad about, but I think that's stuff that I would have done if I had been well. And like, when it comes down to my body and grief over that, I think I grieved my body before I got my stoma, before I got my bag. I think I was at the end of my tether. I was like, this body's not doing it for me. It's probably not going to last too much longer. And then once I got the bag, I was kind of like totally new lease of life. So I think I had the grief over what my body couldn't do before I had my stoma, and for me, the stoma was life-changing and just completely changed my world, changed my perspective on everything. And the things that I didn't do and that was maybe holding on to before that, they didn't matter anymore because I'd gotten a whole new world back. And now I'm able to do all those things if I want to do them, but I'm happy enough and I'm content with what I'm doing now so that I don't feel like I missed out on anything.
I think for me and grief, I was just starting to process my Crohn's diagnosis. So I was diagnosed in 2020 and then suddenly my body wasn't feeling right and MS hit me and I got diagnosed with MS in 2022. So I really hadn't gotten over the grief of the first diagnosis when I was hit with a second piece of grief, really. So for me, I think it took probably a following 2 years, so really 4 combined, to really work through that grief. And like you said there was a piece of, well, I could have been in Australia and I would have done this and I could have done that. And I won't lie, I probably went through a phase of, I don't know if jealousy is the correct word, but envies, particularly of looking at all these people who like that, drop the hat, let's go to Australia, let's backpack, let's do whatever we want and not have to worry about being tied to the hospital every 8 weeks or appointments or needing your medication or how am I going to bring my medication because it needs to be in a fridge and all these, silly things. Well, they're not silly, they're quite serious, but that they would never have thought of. And then I think when that 4 years kind of passed and I saw the light in a little way, I kind of said to myself, I don't think I'd want to move to Australia, actually. I was getting caught up in what everyone else was doing. And yeah, I might have done it if my health as well. And I might have liked it, I might have hated it, I don't know. But I've kind of come around and I've looked at it in a bit of a different light and how much I've actually changed my life for the better. I know it sounds so trite, but prior to getting sick, or I suppose exercise wasn't even on my radar. Like in school, I was that person that mitched PE, anything to get out of it. And then the real wake-up call for me actually was finding out that I almost have osteoporosis. And at the age of 29, I was like, okay, I really need to do something now. And I am exercising as best I can, like 3-4 times a week. Like it's become something I really, really love now. And I almost regret not having realised that sooner. I don't think it would have changed the path of my chronic illnesses, but maybe it would have stood to me a little bit better in terms of my bone health. So yeah, I think, look, grief will still ebb and flow a little bit for me. It'll come up again and I know it's not fully gone. But I'm choosing for the moment to look more so at what positive has it brought me, and I'm absolutely a different person and in many ways for the better for being sick, as crazy as that sounds.
I completely agree as well. Yeah, I'm definitely a better person for it. I think I've learned a lot. I learned a lot of empathy as well, and how to cope with what we cope with is a lot. So if somebody else comes along to you and they're struggling with something, I think you've a lot more empathy in you, and you know how to kind of deal with stressful situations, and you can take a lot of that on, and like sometimes to your detriment as well. I don't know if you do this, but I kind of mind everyone and take it all on myself.
Yeah, and you just get exhausted. I remember when I just came home and I lay on the couch and looked at the ceiling and I was like, oh my God, I need a couple of hours just to decompress there. But I get it totally, yeah.
You stole my last question off me, because I was going to ask you I know we all know what it's taken from us, but what has it given us? And it's so beautiful that you both shared there. Essentially, it's giving you strength, empathy, understanding, and all these other life skills, and changed the person you are and made you much more deeper understanding people. You've both literally been holding a mirror up to each other in different kind of parts throughout the story, but is there any questions you'd like to ask each other?
Yeah, do you listen to your body? Because I don't. I'm terrible at it, really, really bad at it, and that's something that I find quite difficult. And I think we spoke about this as well, Jonathan, is that I throw myself into, be it work, fitness, whatever it is, and I go hell for leather, and then once I stop I crash, and then I have to pick myself back up again and I do it all over again, and I just keep doing that. And you'd think I would learn at 39 years of age, but I haven't, and I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah,
that is me to a T. It's like I burn the candle at both ends when I shouldn't even be burning it at one end. Like it should be quenched, and there's me just going, no, I entirely agree. And it's a balance that I constantly strive to reach, and my only way of balancing it now is being the first one to leave an event or do an Irish goodbye or go to bed early. That's my only way that I've managed to try and balance it, but otherwise no. I think it comes down to the piece of feeling the pressure to use the good days. That's something that I suffer with massively. If I'm feeling good and I'm just sitting on the couch doing nothing, it feels wasted. And it's not a wasted day. It's absolutely not. It's a day of rest. Everyone, the length and the breadth of the world, is sitting down on the couch doing nothing, but I almost feel like I shouldn't. And it comes back to that piece of the pressure that we're putting on ourselves. Like, nobody is telling me not to sit on the couch. It's totally coming from myself. So when I learn the secret of not doing this, you'll be the first that I will tell, Terri, and we can conquer it together.
Please do. Because I'm the exact same. The minute I'm like not doing something, I get real anxious. I'm like, why don't I have something to do? I should be out like going for a run. If I've free time, that's not what work. I should be out doing these things to better myself. But at the same time, I'm kind of going, no, actually stay in bed or sit on the couch and watch that film and just chill out for the hour. But it's very hard. It's very, very hard. And it must be something that we all have as people with chronic illnesses, that you just take the good days and you quite literally run with them. Yeah.
Completely.
I think it's that, for me, it's like the fear of my mind having enough time in the silence to start thinking up scary things. Like, I just can't have a quiet mind, because then I'll start panicking about, wait, my medication, what does this mean? And what if I do want to have a baby? And then, no, if I'm busy and I don't get the time, and that's such a bad coping mechanism. I am not advocating this whatsoever. But I think that circles back onto that grief piece. It's unprocessed, don't want to think about it, so let's just keep really busy. But at some point it will have to be thought about. So yeah.
Completely. There's so much stolen time. Like, we've all had our hospital stints. We've all had the days we couldn't leave the house. And then when you have time back, you're thinking, oh, I can't be wasting time. I got to do something. And you're not exactly living in the moment, because you're putting added pressure on yourself to be out using energy that maybe in that moment will be better off saved. But then again, there's also this side of being like, you don't know if you're saving money because you don't know what, or saving energy because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So the uncertainty of living with chronic illness, it doesn't really allow you to be present in the moment at any stage. And it's a lot of work I know meditation, I can do breath work, because breath work I have to focus on my breath, and it kind of takes me out of my mind a little bit. But if I'm just to sit in meditation, I'm like, oh no, the bad thoughts are flooding in.
Yeah, I can't meditate either, because I just end up off on a tangent somewhere else. So writing lists, I need to do this, I need to get that done. Yeah, it doesn't work.
A line that someone said to me, and I hadn't realised, and you said it there, Jonathan, around, they said, you're not living in the moment. I was like, what are you talking about? Look at all these great things I planned. I'm living in those moments. And they're like, you're thinking of the next thing that you've planned. And it's so true. And then I think it just puts so much pressure on thinking ahead to plan, and then worrying that I won't be able to do that plan that I've made. And it's such a vicious cycle. Wouldn't recommend.
Our minds never stop. They never stop. No. Like, meditating for someone with chronic illness is the hardest thing ever to do, to quiet your mind, because you have so many fears and so many lists and so many plans. And then when you're sitting there, you finally remember something that you completely forgot you were supposed to do, and you go, oh crap. And then sure, it's just a vicious cycle of just chasing thoughts and getting up out of them. But now, it's been a fantastic conversation this evening, ladies. We've definitely covered everything that I wanted to get through on my side, but definitely for you, is there any topics you'd like to dive into? My big finish was going to be, what are the positive things that you can pull out of your chronic illness? But we kind of did dive into that already. So.
I can rehash some of them in a different way. I don't take shit from people. That can be the opening line. I don't. You realize that time is so precious that if someone's draining your energy, no more than if you're in a relationship with someone that isn't willing to understand, go on. I know it's easier said than done, but go on, move on. It's a lot easier said than done, but you have to realize, like, our energy is so precious. And Terri, we talked about fatigue there. It's the fatigue, but it's the mental strain and drain of having a chronic illness, and you don't need someone sucking that energy and zapping it from you in other ways. And that might come across as selfish, and maybe it is a little bit, but you do have to be selfish, I think, when you have chronic illness, and surround yourself with people that are willing to help and learn and be a part of your life, the good and the bad.
That's kind of something that I've only realised in the last maybe 5-6 years, is that, like, I had a lot of people in my life that were like sucking the energy out of me, and I just felt that I was constantly running after them, doing things to them, but it wasn't reciprocated at all. And I think once you start to realise that and kind of go, okay, that person's not for me anymore, I've obviously outgrown that relationship or whatever it is, and you can kind of start moving on and growing up a little bit, and then you just relax yourself a little bit, so you don't have that constant stress of having to, oh, I better text that person now, or I better do this thing now because they need me to do it. I'm a lot more like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to stay home today, or I just need to chill out on my own. Like, I'm a lot more open to saying to my friends, I can't go out today. and they're a lot more receptive to it. And 9 times out of 10, they're going, okay, great, thanks. I didn't want to go out either.
Everyone's always looking for that one person that's going to be like, nah, and then everyone can just bow out. It's great.
Nobody has FOMO anymore. It's great. You can just chill out. Nobody wants to do it anyway.
It's always me. No, yeah.
You get to a certain age where you just think like, I'm not doing that, you know. And I think, but actually having that level of selfishness even, I definitely want to think of a better word, because when you do become that little bit of selfish and more protective of your own time and your own peace, it allows you to show up so much better for maybe those people you'll meet at a later date, or the other people that are in your life. Because if you're being pulled and dragged, and your energy is so limited when you're dealing with this sort of stuff, so protecting your peace and everything by actually being selfish in that moment is a beautiful thing. One thing I want to throw at you ladies is, if you were to go back to the very start of your journey, what is one piece of advice you would give to yourself?
I don't think it's advice, but it's the line of, you're a hell of a lot stronger than you think. Like, I'll never forget, I suppose, the first instance being diagnosed with Crohn's and actually wailing, like a wail escaped my lips. And I was like, I remember ringing my mother. I'm like, I can't do this. And I've spoken before, my mom has Crohn's. And, you know, what a tough line that would have been for her to hear, having lived with it since 1999. And then when I was further diagnosed with MS, I definitely actually faced into that with that sense of, I've done this once before, I can do it again. So I think the advice there is probably, don't underestimate how strong and resilient you are. You will be knocked down, but you will rise up. And it was a line that my mom said, that when she was first diagnosed, her consultant said, she was actually lying on the bed after he'd examined her, and he was like, you can either lie down underneath this and it can take you over, or you can take it over. And she was like, I stood up and I was like, I'm taking it over. And I've carried that line on, and I'll keep saying that. So that's both of our mantras. So that would be the advice: you take it over.
That's great. I love that. That's really good. For me, it's I don't let it define me. And for a long time, I was the girl with Crohn's disease. Everywhere I went was the girl with Crohn's disease. Made a point out of it nearly in work because I was out sick so much. Like, everybody knew me as the sick girl. And I kind of carried that around for a long time, and I didn't know how to not be the sick girl. And then I think I spoke to you about this, Jonathan, that I switched jobs and decided I wasn't telling anyone. And then moved on to another job. So nobody knew in one place, moved on to the next job, and then started like working a lot more with Crohn's and Colitis Ireland, started doing a lot more interviews, but it was in a completely different sense. It was a much nicer way of doing it. I didn't feel like the sick girl. I was kind of in charge of telling people, because I wasn't in flares, I wasn't sick at the time, so I was able to do it on my terms. And it wasn't constantly like, oh, I'm out sick again and all that kind of thing. So I think for me, it's been not letting it define me, and that you are stronger than your illness. And you will always be stronger than your illness.
You both give me some chills there with some stuff like, not letting it take over is class. Like, that sentence, what a mantra. And Terri, for you, the sick child was the label. And then when the next job, it was your secret, and now it's your power. So you really see the transition of going through life and how you've really taken it by the reins. Absolutely. Ladies, it's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you this evening, and you're two amazing women. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Jonathan.
A massive thank you to Sarah and Terri for coming back on the podcast and for being so open. This conversation really showed how layered the female experience of IBD can be. The fatigue that nobody sees, the pressure to look okay, you're talking about body comments, the appointments, the relationships, the questions about motherhood, and the grief of the life you thought you might have. This was a fantastic conversation about learning how to live differently, how to be honest with yourself, and how to not let illness define your story. So I just want to say another massive thank you to Sarah and Terri for coming on and just being brilliant. And so anyone who's listening, who's going through their own invisible battles, I hope this episode reminds you you're allowed to rest, you're allowed to change, and you're still so much more than what your body is going through. As always, thank you so much for being here. If you learned from this episode, please share it with someone else that you think might learn, and I'll see you next week.